What's going on, you guys? Today we're learning the song Let's Fall in Love for the Night by FINNEAS. Now real quick before we get into it, I would like to ask that if you find this guitar tutorial helpful, that you please consider subscribing. That would really mean the world to me. Now let's get into it. You are watching Logan's Lessons. Our capo is going to be on the 5th fret. Let's start with the intro, which is also the chorus. We start with the D minor chord. To play a D minor chord, we're going to place our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B, and our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the high E string. We then go to a G major chord, which to play a G major chord in this song, we're actually going to put our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and our pinky finger on the 3rd fret of the high E string. Because we're also going to have to play G7 in the song. To play G7, we're going to put our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the high E string and take our pinky finger off of the 3rd fret of the high E. Okay, so your 3rd finger is on the 3rd fret of the low E, your middle finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of the A, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of the high E. That's a G7 chord. Next chord we have is a C major. We're going to put our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D, and our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the B. Now, another chord we have in the song is an A minor chord. To play an A minor chord, we're going to put our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the the D string, our 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the G, that's where the G string comes in, and then your 1st finger on the 1st fret of your B string. Okay, so we have an A minor. Another chord we'll see a few times in this song is an E7. To play an E7, we're going to place our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A string and our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the G string. Okay? So for the intro, the chord progression will go D minor, G to G7, and then A minor. And you do A minor for twice as long. Okay? So you have D minor, G, G7, then A minor. And you do A minor twice. So now let's talk about picking pattern. The picking pattern on the D minor chord starts with our thumb on the D string. Then we hit the G string with our index finger. Okay? Then right after that, you slap. Okay? Then right there, after you slap, you're going to put your middle finger on the B string and your 3rd finger on the high E. And you're going to pick those two together. Okay? Then you're going to take your 1st finger off of the 1st fret of your high E string and you're going to pick those two strings together again. And then slap. Okay? Then right there we hit the G string open in transition to the G chord. So, okay, do that with me. Now similarly to the D minor, we're going to start with our thumb, but this time the thumb is going to be on the low E string, okay? Then our 1st finger is going to be on the G string. Then you're going to slap just like we did for the D minor. Then right here, we hit the B and the high E together again. And then we put our 1st finger down for the G7. That's where the G7 comes in. So you have this like, and you slap, okay? Okay, so in context. And then right there, we go to an A minor. We're going to start with our thumb on the A string, our 1st finger then on the D, and then the G and the B get picked together with your middle and your 3rd finger. So I should also mention there's a slap before you hit the G and the B together. And then you take your 3rd finger off to expose the G string, just have the G string open there, and you hit the G and the B together again. So like this, and slap again, okay? So in context, one thing I should also mention there is that the A minor happens twice, so in between you hit the D string, so like a, and then you're back up to the D minor, but the 2nd line changes. Before we get to the 2nd line, however, let's go through that together one more time. Okay, then the 2nd line also starts on a D minor. Same spiel as far as picking pattern goes, and that G major also behaves the same. And and then we're going to a C. So where it changes is instead of going to an A minor chord, we go to a C major. Okay? And so here, same picking pattern as the A minor, except the finger that you're going to be lifting off is your first finger off of the first fret of the B string. Okay? Now in the third line, we kind of mix the first and the second together, and we start D minor to G like normal, then C major to A minor. Same thing for each of those as their previous counterparts, but we only play each of those once, starting on the C to A minor. Okay? Then the fourth line changes pretty drastically, and we start on the D minor, and you hit the G, and you just strum the G out. Then after the G, strum out the G7, strum out a C major chord, okay? So I'm about to play the entire intro for you. Entire intro. Let's play it together. Then we get into the verse. Now the verse is pretty similar, but it's not exactly the same. So I'm going to show you the discrepancies. So the first line stays the same. But then the second line changes. So you're going from D minor to G to C, and then we go to an E major. To play an E major, it's like the E major 7 I mentioned earlier, but you're just going to add your third finger on the second fret of your D string. And you're going to play the low E, then you're going to hit the D string with your first finger, and then the G and the B strings together, and then just the G string. Okay, so like that. So we have this. And then after that, we go to a third line, which is the same as the third line in the chorus. You go from C to A minor. Then the fourth line changes as well. We start on the D minor, and you do D minor twice. Then we go to the G. We hit the low E string with our thumb, the G string with our first finger, and then the B and the high E together with our middle and third. Okay? Then we're going to do an up, down on just the top strings. Then we're going to lift our pinky off, so it's just the open strings, for 1, and then put our first finger down for the G7. Like that. So that last chord will sound like this. Okay? So that's the transition into the chorus. Now before we talk about the subsequent choruses, I want to go back over that verse, so feel free to play along with me. Okay, so right after that, we get into another chorus, which technically doesn't have guitar in it. It's just piano and some like other production stuff. But you can play what I showed you for the intro for that second chorus. And then we're back into another verse, which is the same as what I just showed you. And then after that, we get into an outro chorus kind of thing, which I'll show you now. The chord progression is roughly the same, but we're just going to strum each of the chords out softly, if that makes sense. So the first chord we have is a D minor chord, and we're going to pick the D, the G, the B, and the high E together softly. Then we go to a G major, which we're just going to softly strum, to a G7, which we're also going to softly strum. Then here for the A minor, we're going to kind of draw it out a little bit more. we're going to pick the A, then the D, then the G. The B, we're going to take our first finger off and hammer it onto the first fret of the B. And then you're going to hit the high E string. So we have this D minor to a G, G7, A minor. Then we go D minor, G, G7, C, E7, like I showed you earlier, and you're just going to strum that. Then we go D minor, G, G7, C to A minor. And then when we start saying I know better, we start picking up the picking pattern again, going from the D minor to the G, D minor to G, D minor, slowing it down here, and you just kind of strum out the G, G7, and then we go to a C major 7. To a C major 7, we're going to put our third finger on the third fret of the A, our middle on the second fret of the D, and you're going to pick each of the notes down from the A, the D, the G, the B, the high E. Okay? So that last chorus will sound like this, okay? And that is how you play Let's Fall in Love for the Night. If you have a song request, shoot me a comment or a DM. I don't bite. If you wish to be notified of future videos, hit that bell. I sincerely hope that you are well. Please do me a favor and hit that like button blue. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe too. I hope this video has been a blessing. You've been watching Logan's Lessons.